We're reading the Bible in a year. Today is day 62, and we are reading Numbers 18 through 20. Numbers 18 starts off with a clarification and a specification of the unique holy nature of the priesthood and how they are set apart in a special and different way than everybody else, even than the Levites. And remember from a few chapters back, the Levites were consecrated and set apart as holy unto the Lord. But even the Levites are not supposed to come into the holy place. They serve at the tent of meeting, but they do not enter the most holy place. And if anybody does enter into the holy place when they're not supposed to be, any Levite, anybody that's not a priest, then they're to be put to death. And even if priests participate in allowing that, everybody, the priest and the Levite, are to be put to death. The Lord takes his holiness very seriously. The next part of 18 goes on to describe the portions of sacrifices that are offered by the people of Israel and how those are a blessing and provision for the priesthood so that they can eat and be blessed. And these are things that are dedicated to the Lord, but given to the priests, and those are theirs. The Lord once again here declares that the firstborn of every living thing belongs to him. And generally that means that that firstborn thing should be sacrificed. But if it's an unclean animal, it needs to be redeemed and replaced with a proper sacrifice instead of being offered, because an unclean offering would be counterproductive and the antithesis of what the whole point of the offerings and everything are. The other thing that gets redeemed is humans. Once again, God displays his dislike and disinterest in any sort of human sacrifice. And while he calls for the firstborn to be dedicated to him, he says, redeem this one. Don't execute the child, but redeem them with a proper sacrifice. Next, the Lord talks about how he is the inheritance for the Levites. They don't receive an inheritance as the rest of Israel does. Their inheritance is the Lord. The rest of Israel offers a tenth, a tithe, something that even comes before the law, and the Levites receive that tenth, and then they are to offer a tithe, a tenth of their portion unto the Lord. This process of offering a tenth is a show of devotion and good faith toward God or toward those who serve the Lord. It comes before the law, and it's kind of beyond the law as established here in the Old Testament, which is why we still practice that today. And so you give a tenth, and then that's how the ministers and any church staff are supported. And then we too continue that same thing of from our portion giving a tenth as well. Chapter 19 deals with purification rituals, and it starts off with a red cow that is unblemished, that's never been yoked, that's got to be sacrificed, and its blood sprinkled on the altar. And then it is a whole burnt offering. It's a sin offering. And so it is presented to the Lord. It is burned completely to ash. Everybody that touched it at any point of the process must then wash themselves there unclean till evening. And then these ashes are gathered and kept in a clean place, and they are used as part of the purification for the water for purification rituals moving forward. For anybody who touches a dead thing or is for whatever other reason unclean, that the way that they would be purified is partially through utilizing this water that has been purified and sacrificed over in this way. Chapter 20 now gets into some more narrative about what's going on as the Israelites are wandering. It starts off with Moses and Aaron becoming disqualified for entering the promised land. Everybody's complaining. Again, why'd you take us out of Egypt? It was so good there. Now this is terrible. This isn't what you promised us, and it's so bad. It's like every other day they forget completely why they're wandering and why they're not in the promised land and receiving all the blessings that they were given and promises they were given before they left Egypt. Moses and Aaron are told to take Aaron's staff from before the tent of meeting and to go and speak to a rock, and it will produce water and be a blessing to the Israelites. Well, they kind of do that, but they don't really do it right. You remember all these times when we were reading before and it says, and then they did just as the Lord commanded. They did everything the way God told them to. Well, that's not what happens here. He tells them, go speak to the rock. Moses turns and he goes, you guys are idiots. Why are you so rebellious? Brr. And he hits the rock twice, and then water comes flowing out and the people receive water. But the Lord tells Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me to demonstrate my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land I've given them. They don't get to go into the promised land because they didn't do this the right way. It says, these are the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he demonstrated his holiness to them. The Lord is still showing how he is set apart, and the people he has called to himself are called out and set apart from, called out from the rest of the world. And they're not following that well. And if they will not be holy as he is calling them to be holy and different and set apart and follow his ways the way he asks them to, tells them to, then they will not receive the blessings that he has for them. The last things that happen in chapter 20 are Moses comes up against the nation of Edom. And you remember, these are relatives. The king of Edom comes out and says, hey, you can't go this way. And Moses says, come on, look, we went down to Egypt, and then God has brought us out of Egypt, and now we're following his ways, and we just want to pass through, and we won't touch any of your stuff. And if we do use any, even of your water or anything else, then we will pay you a fair price for it. And, please just let us pass through. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to walk through. And he says, you absolutely will not. And they bring the army out and stand in the road and prevent them from going, and Israel turns away. And then we get to the death of Aaron. The Lord reiterates his promise/curse against Aaron that you will not enter my promised land. So take your son Eleazar, go up on the mountain. And they go up on the mountain, and Aaron's clothing as high priest is all transferred over to Eleazar. Aaron dies, and then the nation of Israel mourns him for 30 days. And all of these different ways that Israel fails or attempts and falls short of following God and his righteousness, I am just reminded of the call to his holiness and how much grace there is in the midst of that. But once again, it just speaks to me how incredibly holy and perfect God is, and what he calls us to, and who and how he calls us to be as we follow him and declare him as Lord and Savior. As I continue to place my faith in him today, I'm reminded of what he truly calls me to, and also know that he has called me by the sacrifice of Christ. He has made the way for me to be declared righteous because it's Christ's righteousness. He's made a way for me to be declared holy because it's Christ's holiness on me and in me, working through me. And it's the same for you. You are called to be holy and perfect and to pursue God, knowing you will fall short. He has already paid the full price for your sin, for all of your falling short. And he offers grace that even when you fall short one more time, you are still called to turn back to him and continue following. So let's do that. Let's keep digging into his word and keep pursuing him in all that we do, that we might be holy, that we might be called good and faithful servant at the end of our lives. Can't wait to hear what God is speaking to you through his word this week. Let's talk about it in the comments. Be rad for Jesus.